My brothers, my sisters, my kindred souls walking upright through the dust of the earth, let us draw near and lift our hearts. Let us bring our tired bones and aching doubts to the firelight of truth, and sit together in reverence for the sacred turning of time. For the earth moves in circles, and so does the life of the chosen, and there is a mighty truth that rolls like thunder across the mountains of our becoming. The life of the chosen one, the truly chosen, does not begin in full until the age of 40. Yes, you heard me, and I say it again with conviction etched into every breath. The life of a chosen one begins at 40. Not because 40 is a magical number, nor because the world finally gives way to your dreams then, but because at 40 the chosen one begins to remember who they are, not as the world told them, but as they were created to be. You see, in the early years, those tender, trembling days of youth, we are all caught up in proving that we are worthy, that we are strong, that we are acceptable, that we are enough. We bend our backs under burdens never meant to be carried, smiling through clenched teeth, and hiding our light beneath the veil of societal comfort. We chase titles, we chase affection, we chase dreams that were whispered into us by other people's fears. We run as if the finish line is somewhere outside ourselves, when all the while it is waiting within. And so the chosen one, marked not by ease but by calling, does not come into their full flame in those early years. No, that light needs time to ferment. It needs time to sit in the soul's deep cellars, where shadows speak and truth is not polished but raw. The chosen ones are often misunderstood, overlooked, rejected even, not because they are less but because they are more. And the world often fears what it cannot contain. But at 40, O beloved, at 40 there is a returning, a sacred homecoming to the truth that has waited patiently through the noise. The mirror begins to show more than just the curve of the face, or the line of the jaw. It shows the cost of survival, the depth of sacrifice, and the holy strength that comes from standing back up every time the world tried to knock you down. 40 is not the age of decline. It is the season of ascension, for by then the chosen one has known enough storms to no longer fear the rain. They have cried enough tears to recognize the beauty in brokenness. They have been betrayed enough to know what loyalty feels like when it shows up. And so they begin, not in the hurried, frantic way of youth, but with the measured, majestic stride of one who has walked through fire and did not burn. You see, by 40, the chosen one no longer needs applause to believe in their song. The quiet becomes a friend, not a threat. Loneliness is no longer a punishment but a path to deeper communion. You learn that solitude is not emptiness, but sacred space for the soul to stretch out its limbs and breathe. And in that sacred silence the voice of purpose begins to echo, not the kind shouted from stages or posted on glowing screens, but the kind that whispers from within and says, now is the time. You begin to dream again, not with the reckless abandon of youth, but with the courage of one who knows what loss tastes like and still chooses hope. You have seen too much to pretend, hurt too deeply to be shallow. So your dreams are no longer about what you can gain, but about what you can give, what you can build, what you can leave behind like breadcrumbs of light for the ones who will come after. Oh yes, the life of the chosen one begins at 40, because by then, you have failed enough to know that failure is not the opposite of success, but its pathway. You have made enough mistakes to understand that shame is a thief, and forgiveness is a freedom song. You have been humbled by life's grip, knocked down by grief, torn open by disappointment, but here you stand, breathing, becoming. And there is something about that endurance, that resilience, that sheer raw refusal to stay down, that births a new kind of power. It is not loud, it is not boastful, it does not announce itself in the marketplace. It simply is, steady, present, unshakable. And the chosen ones, oh, they know that by 40 you no longer apologize for your light. You stop asking permission to be brilliant. You no longer shrink to fit the rooms you walk into. You walk in with the grace of your ancestors and the weight of every prayer your grandmother whispered over your sleeping body. You speak, and your words carry the echo of every tear you refuse to let break you. You are no longer waiting for someone to save you. You have become the answer to your own prayers, and in doing so you become a lighthouse for others, not because you have it all figured out, but because you have been willing to go deep when others stayed shallow. At 40, your no becomes holy. Your boundaries become blessed. You no longer say yes out of guilt. You no longer chase love that runs from you. You no longer contort yourself into palatable pieces for people who never knew how to feast on your fullness. You stand, whole, flawed, yes, bruised, maybe, but whole. And from that wholeness flows a new authority, the authority of authenticity. The power that comes not from position, but from presence. And the world begins to take notice, not because you shout louder, but because you radiate something real, something earned, something undeniable. And at 40 you begin to reclaim the parts of yourself that you once buried to belong. The artist you silenced to fit into the cubicle. The healer you hid beneath degrees and diplomas. The dreamer you dismissed as unrealistic. You dust off your gifts like old records and realize they still play. You begin to paint again, to write again, to dance barefoot in the kitchen with music only you can hear. You begin to remember that joy is not a luxury, it is a necessity, and that laughter, deep belly laughter, is a holy sound that can heal even the most scarred soul. You stop waiting for special occasions to wear your favorite clothes. You understand now that every day is sacred if you're awake enough to notice. Yes, beloved. The life of a chosen one begins at 40 because by then you have learned how to let go. Let go of grudges that rot the soul. Let go of bitterness that poisons the tongue. Let go of trying to rewrite the past. You stop begging people to love you the way you needed back then. You begin to parent the child inside you, telling them what they never heard, giving them the hugs they missed, the praise they longed for. You hold your own hand through the darkness, and in that self-compassion you bloom. You forgive those who never said sorry, not for their sake but for your freedom, and in doing so you walk lighter, speak softer, love deeper. Oh, and the chosen ones, they begin to love differently at 40. Love becomes less about fireworks and more about firewood, something that sustains, that warms, that stays. They no longer confuse attachment with affection. They choose partners who see their soul, not just their surface. They love with eyes wide open and hearts not afraid to be seen. And for those who walk alone, they do so not with sorrow but with sovereignty. They dine alone and do not feel lonely. They travel solo and return richer. They know that the greatest love story is the one you write with yourself, and the beloved who never leaves your side. By 40, the chosen one no longer seeks success that sparkles but fades. They redefine success altogether, not as accumulation but as alignment, not as climbing but as becoming. They know that true wealth is found in peace, in purpose, in people who see you without the mask. They no longer chase relevance, they create resonance. They are no longer afraid to be different. They wear their uniqueness like a crown, knowing that what sets them apart is what sets them free. And when the storms come, and they do come, they no longer crumble. They lean into the wind, remembering that trees with the deepest roots can withstand the fiercest gales. They do not curse the rain, they drink it. They do not dread the dark, they use it to rest, to recalibrate, to rise anew. Because by 40, the chosen one knows every ending is an invitation to begin again. So yes, my dear ones, the life of the chosen one begins at 40 because by then you no longer fear time, you befriend it. You no longer measure yourself against others, you celebrate them. You realize that comparison is a thief, and contentment is a crown. You stop competing and start contributing. You no longer seek to impress, you seek to impact. You use your story, messy, miraculous, still unfinished, as medicine. You speak from scars, not open wounds. And in doing so you become a bridge for others to cross, a mirror for others to see themselves in, a torchbearer lighting the way not with perfection but with presence. And so, to every soul who wonders if they are late, who fears that their best days are behind them, I say this: you are right on time. Nothing you have lost, nothing you have broken, nothing you have endured will be wasted. The potter uses shattered pieces to make the most beautiful mosaics. Your story is not over. It is just beginning. For when the clock strikes 40, something sacred shifts. And the heavens lean low and whisper, now is the time. And you, yes, you will rise. Not as the world told you to, but as you were always meant to. Rise with the wisdom of your wounds. Rise with the rhythm of your roots. Rise with the fire of your freedom. Rise, chosen one. The world has waited long enough. But let us not be deceived into believing that the dawning at 40 is an ending in itself, for that would be far too neat, far too simple for the sacred and intricate dance of a chosen life. No, the breath you draw at 40 is the first inhalation after years of holding yourself small, tight, and contained. It is the gasp of emergence, the sound a soul makes when it first realizes it can stretch its wings and the sky will not fall. It is the awareness that you are no longer a guest in your own body, no longer a stranger in your own spirit, but the rightful heir to your own becoming. The world, with all its noise and demands and measurements, has lost its grip on you, and you truly begin to live. Not for approval, not for validation, not for applause, but for truth, for beauty, for justice, for love. You learn with eyes wide and heart tender that age is not a thief. No, age is a giver. It does not come to rob you of youth, but to gift you with depth. It brings the lines upon your face not as punishments, but as poetry, each one a stanza carved in time, a love song to your endurance. The creases by your eyes speak of laughter that shook your ribs, and tears that baptized you in midnight prayers. Your body may change, but it does not betray you. It becomes an altar, a temple that has carried you through hurricanes and deserts. And you stand taller, not because the burdens are gone, but because you have learned to carry them with grace, to turn them into stories, into wisdom, into medicine for those who have yet to arrive at the sacred gate of 40. Oh, and you begin to speak with a new tongue, not the language of proving, but the language of presence. You stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You stop begging for seats at tables built on exclusion, and instead build your own table with wide benches and room for all the misfits, the dreamers, the broken healers, the visionaries, whose hearts beat to a different drum. And at that table you feast, not just on food but on laughter, on truth, on song, on the nourishment that comes from being seen, truly seen, and loved not in spite of your scars, but because of them. For the chosen one at 40 knows that community is not just a gathering, it is a mirror, a balm, a choir of souls that sing each other home. You look back on your younger self with tender eyes. The one who tried so hard, loved so deeply, stumbled so often. You no longer scold them. You gather them in your arms and thank them for surviving, for trying, for dreaming when they had every reason to give up. You no longer see your past as a prison, but as a pilgrimage. You understand now that every delay was divine, every detour was a direction, and every heartbreak was a holy invitation to become more whole. You were not lost. You were being led. And now that the veil has lifted, now that the fog has cleared, you can trace the fingerprints of grace on every moment that once felt like ruin. You begin to walk differently, not hurried, not desperate, but grounded. Your feet carry the knowing of 1,000 miles, and you no longer chase time. You walk with it. You no longer run from your shadow. You dance with it. You no longer fear the night. You light candles in it. And in that calm, in that quiet certainty, you become a sanctuary to others, a resting place, a lighted window. People come to you not for noise but for stillness. They come not to be dazzled but to be held. And you, O chosen one, you hold them, not with answers but with presence, not with perfection but with permission to be raw, to be real, to be in process. You hold space because you have learned how to hold yourself. By 40 you've heard the lies long enough to recognize the truth. You've worn the masks long enough to know the freedom of shedding them. You no longer confuse sacrifice with self-abandonment. You no longer praise burnout as a badge of honor. You know now that you are not a machine, not a product, not a utility. You are a living, breathing, feeling being, with a soul that deserves rest, pleasure, nourishment, and joy. You give yourself what the world withheld. You become your own advocate, your own nurturer, your own witness. And in doing so you give others permission to do the same, because authenticity is contagious. And when one chosen one awakens, the world tilts ever so slightly toward light. And how sweet it is to be in your own company at 40. To sit in the quiet of your room, and feel no ache for noise. To sip your tea slowly, not because you are killing time, but because you are honoring it. To turn off the world and tune into your own breath, your own heartbeat, your own longing. You no longer fill your days to avoid yourself. You meet yourself, gently, fully. You read your own soul like scripture, and every line tells you you are holy, you are here, you are home. You have made peace with your becoming. You have made peace with not knowing. You have made peace with the path unfolding. And love, oh love, what a new song it sings at 40. It is no longer a transaction, no longer a drama played out for an audience. It is not found in grand declarations or fleeting passion, but in the quiet daily devotion of showing up, of being kind, of telling the truth, of holding hands in the storm, of cooking meals when the heart is tired, of listening with eyes and silence and soul. Love becomes less about being completed, and more about being complemented, less about possession, and more about presence. You learn that the real love of your life is life itself, and all others are beautiful guests. You begin to shed the need for speed. You understand now that fast is not the same as full. You trade urgency for intention. You savor the moment, the mundane, the miraculous in the ordinary. You look at the sky more. You notice the way light moves across the floor. You laugh more, deep, bellyful, soul-cleansing laughter that shakes loose everything stuck. You dance in your kitchen without choreography. You cry without shame. You feel without filter. Because by 40 you no longer hide your humanity, you celebrate it. You are not afraid to be soft in a world that has hardened so many. You know that tenderness is strength, vulnerability is power, and tears are sacred waters that make the soul fertile. You become a fierce protector of your peace. You curate your company with care. You no longer stay where you are not cherished. You no longer engage in wars that cost your spirit. You choose your battles, and many times you choose peace. Not out of fear, but out of wisdom. You have nothing to prove, nothing to defend. You know who you are. You carry the names given to you by love, not by wounds. And you speak only when your words are an extension of your values, not your ego. Silence becomes a tool, not a threat. You retreat when needed. You rest when tired. You say no when it is sacred. And in all these small acts of resistance, you reclaim your soul. And what a joy it is to begin again at 40. To start something new, not because you are lost, but because you are found. To write the book, launch the business, plant the garden, paint the canvas, walk the new road. Not for fame, not for followers, but for the pure pulsing joy of being alive. You no longer wait for permission. You no longer delay your joy. You do it now. You take the class. You wear the color. You sing out loud. You give your heart room to roam. And in that freedom you discover that you are not too late. You are right on time. The chosen one does not age like the rest. They deepen. They sharpen. They soften. They become more themselves with every passing year. And at 40 they become dangerous in the best way. Dangerous to lies. Dangerous to systems that exploit. Dangerous to fear. They speak truth. They walk in light. They refuse to dim. They refuse to break what has taken so long to mend. They become mirrors of liberation. And when they enter a room, the room knows it has been entered. So rise, rise in your 40s. Not as a closing chapter, but as a radiant prologue. Rise with laughter in your lungs and lessons in your bones. Rise with the ancestors at your back and the future in your palms. Rise with your voice clear and your path luminous. Rise with your grief turned to wisdom, your longing turned to power, your silence turned to song. Rise not because it is easy, but because it is time. You were not meant to be buried beneath expectations. You were born to bloom beneath the weight of truth. You are not here to repeat. You are here to revolutionize, to become, to bless, to lead. This is your beginning. This is your reckoning. This is your radiant hour. At 40 the fire does not dim, it ignites. And you, chosen one, are the flame the world has been waiting for. Burn brightly. The night is long, but morning always remembers how to find its way, and still there is more. Still the story goes on, like an old river winding through canyons carved by time and truth. Like the breath of the earth herself whispering songs only the spirit can hear. For the life of the chosen one at 40 is not a simple rising, not a neat awakening, but a sacred unraveling, thread by thread, belief by belief, until what remains is only what was always real. You do not just arrive at 40, you emerge raw and resplendent, cloaked in every tear you survived, every injustice you endured, every dream you refused to bury. You no longer seek transformation outside yourself. You understand now that the most revolutionary thing you can do is to come home, to your own bones, to your own knowing, to the divine rhythm pulsing quietly beneath your ribs. By 40 you understand that the soul does not work on a clock made by men. The soul does not rush, does not scramble, does not scream to be heard. It waits. It waits through your noise, your doubt, your busyness, your fear. It waits while you chase approval, while you swallow your voice, while you bend yourself backward into shapes you were never meant to hold. It waits while you hustle for love, for validation, for survival. But when you finally grow tired, gloriously tired, of being anything other than what you are, the soul rises like dawn, slow and golden, ready to guide you home. And this homecoming, this long-awaited reunion with your truest self, begins in earnest at 40, because only then have you lived enough to recognize the sound of your own spirit calling you back. You begin to gather the pieces of yourself scattered across decades of compromise. You find the little girl who danced in puddles, and remind her that joy was never meant to be earned. You find the young man who was told to toughen up, and you teach him how to soften again. You revisit the teenager who was shamed for dreaming too big, and you let them know that the dream was never wrong. It was simply too vast for small minds to understand. You collect all these selves, carry them into your arms, and whisper, "We made it. We're still here." And that is no small thing. No, that is everything. Because the chosen ones are not defined by the ease of their journey, but by the courage it took to keep walking. You no longer define your worth by what you produce. You unlearn the lie that your value lies in your utility. You begin to honor your being, your breath, your presence. You allow yourself to rest without guilt, to play without purpose, to be without explanation. You begin to feel time differently, not as a threat, but as a blessing. Every moment becomes sacred, every sunrise a ceremony. You hold your mornings like a prayer, and your evenings like a gentle exhale. You savor conversations that linger like honey. You learn that slowness is not laziness, it is rebellion in a world addicted to speed. And in your slowness, you begin to feel the divine again, not in temples or pulpits, but in the quiet dignity of your own skin. At 40, your relationships shift. Some people fall away, not out of malice, but because the vibration you now carry cannot be dimmed to fit their comfort. You let them go in peace, with gratitude, with grace. You no longer cling to what depletes you. You no longer betray yourself to belong. You choose depth over proximity, resonance over familiarity. And when love finds you, because love always finds the awakened soul, it finds you whole. It finds you unwilling to play games, unwilling to settle for less than truth. You open your heart, not because you are naive, but because you are strong enough to love again after being broken. You love now with your eyes open, your feet on the ground, and your soul anchored to something eternal. And you begin to teach, Not with chalk and blackboards, but with your life. Your story becomes a living syllabus. Your presence becomes a curriculum of truth. You teach by healing, by rising, by refusing to stay silent, when silence would betray your truth. You teach by creating, by nurturing, by believing in what others have abandoned. You become a midwife for other souls being born into their own power. And you do not need titles for this, no degrees, no applause. You carry your authority in your presence. You walk into rooms and shift the atmosphere without a word. You speak and your words echo into the marrow of those who are ready to remember who they are. The chosen one at 40 begins to see the sacred in everything. The sacred in the way your mother's hands move when she stirs the soup. The sacred in the crow's feet by your eyes that speak of decades of laughter. The sacred in the morning light, kissing your pillow. The sacred in your failures that brought you to your knees, only to teach you how to pray with your whole body. You begin to taste life again, not with the hunger of desperation, but with the reverence of one who knows how precious each bite is. You kiss your children with longer embraces. You look strangers in the eye. You forgive more easily, not because it's easy, but because you've learned that bitterness is too heavy to carry another day. And your body, this body that has carried you, bruised and brilliant, becomes no longer an object to criticize, but a miracle to adore. You begin to listen to it, not just its aches, but its language. You feed it not to punish it, but to honor it. You move it not to shrink it, but to praise it. You no longer measure it against illusions crafted to make you feel inadequate. You touch your skin like holy ground. You speak to your reflection with kindness. You run your fingers along your stretch marks like sacred geography. This body has danced funerals, and kissed lovers, and birthed dreams. It is not wrong, it is not broken, it is a vessel of power, and memory, and divine breath. And the chosen one at 40 begins to wield their voice. No longer hesitant, no longer muffled. You speak truth not to wound, but to liberate. You speak dreams aloud because you are no longer ashamed of wanting more. You tell your story not to boast, but to testify. You write the poems. You sing the songs. You ask the hard questions. You advocate for those who have been silenced. You use your voice to build bridges, to light fires, to plant seeds of revolution in every heart that still believes change is possible. You are no longer afraid of being too much. You are afraid of dying with your truth still inside you, so you let it out. You let it breathe. You let it bloom. You begin to reclaim joy. Not just happiness, which is fleeting, but joy, that deep abiding joy that bubbles up even in sorrow. You laugh even with tears in your eyes. You dance even when your heart is heavy. You sing even when the world seems to forget its melody. Because joy for the chosen is not an escape, it is resistance. It is your birthright. It is your offering to a weary world. And you refuse to let despair have the final word. You live with arms open wide, heart exposed, soul ablaze. At 40 you begin to live with legacy in mind, not legacy built on monuments or bank accounts, but on impact, on how many people feel freer because of your presence, on how many lives were lifted because you dared to tell your truth. You understand now that immortality is not in being remembered, but in making others feel seen while you are still here. You plant trees whose shade you may never sit under. You pour into wells from which others may drink. You love fiercely and fully, knowing that love multiplies when given away. And so the journey continues. Not a straight line but a spiral. Not a race but a rhythm. You do not peak at 40, you bloom. Again and again, with every new layer of truth, with every new act of courage, with every new surrender to joy. The chosen ones know life does not get easier, it gets deeper. And you, beautiful one, are not just aging, you are anchoring. Not just surviving, you are soaring. You are not behind, you are becoming. And becoming has no timeline. Becoming is forever. So walk on, chosen soul. Walk on with your sacred scars, your holy laughter, your fierce compassion. Walk on with your tired feet and your open heart. Walk on even when the road narrows, even when the light dims, even when you are unsure, because this life, this radiant, trembling, extraordinary life, is yours. And it is waiting for you to claim it, not at 20, not at 30, but at 40 and beyond. There is no expiration date on your becoming. There is no limit to your blooming. There is no ceiling on your